infrastructure. But we are now discussing one important infrastructure issue which seems to be surfacing in all its ferocity. We got the report from the Reserve Bank's monetary policy statement that the power sector is now probably facing more problem from the power discoms rather than fuel supply. So those supply issues have been addressed by the government. The new bottleneck seems to be no buyers. The other hint we got about problems in the power sector is from the core sector data. The core sector data had indicated, and even the IIP data had indicated, double-digit growth for the power sector for practically every month in 2014. In 2015, it dropped to single digits, but lo and behold, in April, it was minus 1.1% for the power sector. So is this lack of demand now beginning to catch up and leading to actually power generators keeping their plants idle, which we call in technical jargon load shedding or more load shedding? That's the question we are asking Animesh Chauhan, the Managing Director and CEO of OBC, a big lender to power sector, and Mr. Ramasubramaniam, the co-chairman of Feedback Infra. In a bit, we will hopefully be joined by one of the power generators as well. Mr. Ramasubramaniam, first to you. Is this the feedback you are getting from the power generators? Why is it that power generation in April contracted?
Lata, before I reply to your question, just want to get some history out of the way. If you take the last 5-year period for which clear data is available, power requirement has actually grown plus 5%. Power availability has grown plus 6.5%. I'm wading straight into the controversy around our GDP figures. GDP too has grown upwards of 5, 6, 7%. Industrial GDP too has grown by 6%. So at the outset, I'd like to say that the so-called contraction put out by CEA for April of about 3.5%, if you compare it to the historical growth rate of 6.5%, is actually a contraction of 10% over the historical growth rate. I find that a little puzzling. But I think you've already alluded to the answer to this, which is really the offtake by Discoms. The same CEA report which talks about a 3.5% contraction in April actually talks about load shedding. And if you kind of look at the data in terms of fine print, you will note that in the southern states in particular, planned load shedding itself accounts for a fair bit of the shortage. So that is planned load shedding. Then on top of that is unplanned load shedding. So I think, as you have rightly said, the real answer to this is really in the offtake by the Discoms. I find it a little, even given the fact that, other indicators of capacity utilization, credit offtake, all point to a little slowdown in the growth. But to talk about a contraction, I think is completely off the chart and a little puzzling, right? Now, having said all of this, I'll still like to point out saying that the power deficit, whether you take the energy deficit or you take the peak deficit, is around about 3 to 4%. So if you put all this together, I don't think that this contraction in April is a figure that I would rely on. I think it seems to be an aberration.
Okay. Even if this 10% contraction is an aberration, there is still lower demand coming in from power discoms. So that is, something that we have been alluding to for a while, Mr. Ramasubramaniam. What exactly are the losses that the state discoms have faced in FY15? And has the financial health deteriorated further? Do you have any numbers that you can share with us?
See, I can speak from personal experience of some states that we are operating in.
Sure.
Where I think the situation on the ground, despite all the talk about FRP and assistance, etc., the situation on the ground is that there has been no improvement. If you look at the fact that new models of participation by the private sector, whether they are input-based franchisees, licensees, or distribution franchisees, I cannot recall a single tender that has actually gone out to award in the last 12 months. So I don't think that there's been enough of traction on improvement in the either the state of health of the distribution of the Discoms or of new private sector participation in this. I therefore see little reason to cheer and little reason to expect that Discoms will increase their losses by continuing to offtake from power producers.
Do you have any numbers on this? How much of extra power generation came into the country in the last, say, 12 months or 24 months? and how much of PPAs were signed?
See, if you look at how much power generation has come into the country, right? I first want to set the context of the longer term increase. If you take the 11th five-year plan, and I'm speaking from memory, it roughly increased from about 130,000 to 200,000, which is about an 8.6% per annum growth in installed capacity, right?
Yeah.
That said, in the period of the 12th five-year plan in which we are, it has grown from 200,000. The latest figures that I have are 268,000. Right?
Okay.
So installed capacity is growing at a clip of around 8.5%, which I think is a healthy growth. But having said that, I'm coming back to the figure of saying 3 to 4% is the energy deficit and the peak deficit. So we still have a long way to go in terms of adding installed capacity. And that's where I think the whole slew of problems, and I particularly refer to the banking problem of saying that lenders have to come forward. So this business of saying that there is no credit offtake, there are no projects to lend to, versus the fact that bankers are wary of lending to the power sector. I think this is part of the problem. But I put the distribution problem as the bigger problem as opposed to the power generation problem. Because I just want to point out to the fact that, the PLFs are running somewhere between 60 to 65%. So against an installed capacity of 268,000, offtake hovers around what, 130,000, 140,000 megawatts.
You mean half of it?
Absolutely. I think the PLFs are pointing to that, saying PLFs, if you take the history, even if you take the month-wise trend in the last year, averaged between 60 to 65%. We've hit a high of 65, we hit a low of 60 maybe.
Okay. Well, on that point, since you have spoken about the banker, let me get Mr. Animesh Chauhan